Welcome to the Binmin podcast. We know that the Christian life can be hard to figure out, but we also believe that everyone should know their next step for making their spiritual life more important to them. I'm Pops.
I'm Dave.
And I'm Bob.
We've entitled this series, Why Go to Church? And today, we want to talk about how to create friendships within the church family.
Bob, you have 3 friends.
No one told you life was gonna be this way.
Clap, 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 clap. I couldn't clap.
Friends.
I'm holding my phone.
I know. You get
Friends.
it. You got
It's
it. Okay.
And for all our non-millennial listeners, we apologize. Friends was a syndicated rom-com from the 1990s on NBC that...
I almost forgot what I was going to ask.
You were going to say, why are friendships so important within the church?
And
I think.
Dave was going to really take it away.
And then I was going to take it away
Well, go ahead
by
and
saying
take it away, so.
the church is not a brick and mortar building, but a gathering of Christians. I think you wrote that note.
Well, probably.
Because it's true. If you think about the church, it's easy to not objectify, but judge or think about the church in this capital C empirical sense, when in reality, whatever your age, whatever your ethnic group, your marital status, job, geography, whatever, if you're a Christian, you are part of Christ's body, period. And as part of that body, we're meant to have fellowship both with our triune God and with his family,
that's awesome.
with other believers.
Well said. Well said. Bob, you got anything else?
Yeah, I mean, I said this, I think, on an episode just recently, but let me just say this verse again because it's so good. It's in John 13, verse 35. Jesus says, "By this, all people will know that you're my disciples, if you have love for one another." And so that is just a huge piece of like the world sees us and how we see one another, that we're a loving community that's got to be embedded in the life. So today we're talking about fellowship, but that can seem like a weird word, or like, are we going Lord of the Rings? Like, what's happening right now?
Gosh, I wish.
I know. The next episode we'll all have like beards and
Dad
axes.
calls me Frodo a lot, and it's
your
either because
feet.
I'm short or the feet. Is
It's
it the feet?
definitely your feet.
All right, it's the feet. It's my
so-
cherubic demeanor.
Yeah. So just fellowship means creating spiritual friendships, right? That's the gist, creating spiritual friendships. And I'm going to be honest about this. It can feel hard. It can feel even scary to reach out to other people. Like, not because they're not always friendly, right? Like, because oftentimes they are in the church, but sometimes it's just hard to know, where do I start in making relationships?
Yeah.
Yeah, and especially if you're a new Christian, young Christian.
Or an introvert.
Or just
Yeah.
somebody like myself that's kind of introverted. So what are some... Okay.
Said no Dr. Bob Martin ever.
So what are some ways for making friends in the church?
I
Dave,
think...
you have friends. Why don't you tell us?
Oh, it's going to get real sad. I think it's just as simple as be a nice person. Let's not overcomplicate it. If anyone's read Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People, I think just straight to the basics. Make it about other people. If you go to a new church, go talk to a greeter, introduce yourself, be warm, ask basic questions. If they ask you questions, answer and be engaging. If they direct you to a welcome area, go. There will be other people who are also putting themselves out there who are seeking community as well. And heck, if there's free coffee involved, you know I'm going to show up.
You know.
But I will say this. One of the best things that ever happened was when my wife and I first visited our now church. We went to the visitor area and found out that the person running the table was my older sister's mentor from college. We met the wife and pastor who started at my brother's church at the same time as him 11 years ago. We met somebody who went to a friend of mine with college. I mean, it was crazy, but we would not have made this huge list of connections if
And
we hadn't
seen God's
just taken the
work in
risk.
that.
It was nuts.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that for us, after 7 months of searching, was the confirmation. And we're members now. We confirmed our child there. We serve there. We're in a small group there. So
Yeah, you took the risk, though, of stepping out and introducing yourself.
it was mostly my wife, though. She's the nice one. And I just follow.
Well, I won't argue with you on that. But I will say also the word same can be your friend here. So attend the same. If there's multiple services at the church worship, it's easy to say, well, I'm tired, I'm going to go to this one. Or I feel great, I'm going to go to the early one. Try to go to the same service, sit in the same area, try and see the same people.
Yeah, that's a good
so that
point.
you can get to know them. Like, I think we are such spontaneous people often that we go, well, I need something new. I need something fresh. This person's a little boring. And we don't realize the beauty of the sameness that we get to meet the people in front of us or back of us. I'm going to brag on you real quick, Pops, because I think it was last Sunday, maybe the Sunday before, I got stopped in the hallway because of the people who sit in front of you. Like, you guys happen to not be there on Sunday because of some other things. And they go, Bob, where are your parents? How are they doing? And we had this like 20-minute conversation. They want to
And
know
it's all your fault.
everything about, and not because you guys are in a group together, not because you're in the class together, not because you're in an accountability group together, but because you sit near one another
Yes.
on Sundays. It's
Not
that
because
sameness.
you owed them money, not because
All right, they stopped me because you owed them money.
because you lost in fantasy football.
Yeah.
No, they really are. Yeah. And
Yeah.
just as an aside, what a lovely family. And
Yeah.
their kids are great.
And
yeah.
you guys have done both things. Dave, keep going on this.
Another idea would be give yourself the challenge. If you're feeling like maybe you're not new, but you are stagnating. I know my wife and I years ago kind of felt like, gosh, we're not really like meeting people. We kind of feel like we've stalled out. And we kind of say hi to the same people.
Yep.
So my wife gave us a challenge. She said, next Sunday, there's this girl who always dresses super cute, and so I'm going to go up and introduce myself. And so she did, and then they became, no joke, some of our closest friends in Colorado ever. Shout out. However, we then have tried to make that a habit where on a sort of each given Sunday, not just, hey, giving the tall nod to somebody, but in fact going up and introducing yourself.
Yeah.
All the better if your church is like ours, where they actually have you print name tags and put them on your chest.
Yes. Yes.
Does make that a little less awkward, but it is good to be intentional and introduce yourself to at least one new person a week.
If your question is, how do I introduce myself? Let me give you my line, and it's this.
Here we go. Drum roll.
Hey, I don't know you. I'm Bob. What's your name?
Yes. Yes.
And that's it.
But what if our name isn't Bob?
Well, then switch that
Okay,
part.
okay, I was just checking, you know.
Well, and you know that's such a good point that we sometimes just forget that it's not that hard to meet people, and if you're friendly, 99.999% of the time,
Yep.
they're going to be friendly back, and people want to create friendships.
Oh,
they
yeah.
want to get
Didn't
that
you?
connection.
What percent of communication did you say is
Nonverbal.
nonverbal?
Oh gosh, I
lot.
think that's like 80%.
80%. So
Yeah.
just having a
Smile.
kind demanner
Yeah.
Yeah.
will get you 4/5 of the way there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can I answer another piece?
Sure, go
I think
ahead.
you're going in the same place. But what about structures? Okay, like Bob and Dave.
Is there
that's-
stuff you can
that's
do?
helpful. Is there place what groups or activities
Yeah.
can people kind of join to meet others and develop the relationships? I mean, I think one of the best ways other people can do this, we can do this, is by joining a group.
Yeah.
Like maybe at your church it's called a community group, a small group, a life group. At ours it's called small groups. Yes, there's a million organic ways to build individual friendships, and we want you to do that. I want to do that. But there are different programs at different churches. These gatherings that are groups are typically like weeknights where you can get to have some hang time and you get to have time opening God's word and helping one another live it out and pray for each other. So that's super conducive to making friends.
Yeah. I would also add, because we have seen the efficacy of small groups, would be to add, if you have the opportunity for a particular Bible study.
Oh,
yeah.
Sometimes those are done on like a night of the week. Maybe that's a Sunday night. It could be a Wednesday night, or sometimes they're done in like seminar format. Sometimes they're done in retreats.
Sometimes mornings, like early morning men's Bible studies.
Yep. And I think that those can be really, really, really helpful. One, because it allows you to walk through a certain portion of the Bible or a study or whatever with a particular group. But it's usually a group that doesn't fluctuate too much. You're sort of all in and you're there, which means you're sharing life. Usually there's a time at the beginning and end to socialize a bit. And it also means that by seeing these people and by praying with and for these people, you've now just created another community potentially out of thin air. I know at the last Bible study that I was a part of, there were men in there 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s that I just would not have necessarily fallen into socialization with.
That's right.
And now I've been able to reap such incredible richness, mentorship, friendships because of that.
Yeah, that's such a great point. One of the other things that I would just bring up is, how about just volunteering?
Probably should have been number one.
Well, okay, so this is easy for me to miss. So I'm going to be like vulnerable about that. I want to get relationships from people. I want them to give to me. Yeah. And usually it's the last thing on my radar to think, hey, where can I go and give my life away
instead of receive
to love people, right? Old, young, holding at a door, behind a camera, like whatever that looks like. So, but I got to say, whether your church calls it volunteering or they call it serving or whether they call it being on a team, this is a great way to make friends and to be alongside others, because literally you read the New Testament and this is what we do with one another. We grow, we serve, we're on mission together, not just looking at each other, but looking forward side by side next to one another. So the church, frankly, cannot function unless we're serving together on it. We are all on mission together. And since we all have natural talents, passions, and gifts, we should be doing this. So you fill in more gaps on this, Dave, because you're probably better at serving and doing some of this than even I am.
Not necessarily by any means, but I think since your work is church work, that's just like sort of so many tendrils of your life kind of just overlap that way. Whereas I know for my wife and I, like we have to be very intentional about seeking it out. But what we found is potentially the greatest underlier of church friendships is shared experience. And whether it's like a church harvest party or set up a tear down or serving on the worship team, being a greeter, handing out bulletins, serving in the nursery, I mean, any of the above and more, literally just by rubbing shoulders with people, you just talk and you talk and you share and you bond and you meet. And I think there's something really special about that, especially when you do maybe come from disparate backgrounds. That's very reflective of the church.
Do you care if I just jump in here, because I want to make a plug for all the pastors out there? And that is, you talked about working in the nursery and the children's ministry. Why don't you discuss why that's so important?
I want to jump in there because, Dave, as you mentioned,
Dad's kids are old. Our kids are young.
Our kids are young. So there's multiple things that happen, I think, when we serve the next generation. One is that if you just ask around, I mean, stats and data will back this up. Most people who come to trust in Jesus come to faith before the age of 18.
Yeah.
So if you're like, hey, I want to evangelize, I want to tell other people, well, great. The ripest harvest, the biggest place to do that is with kids and teenagers. Also, is the best place to disciple, right? Because they're sponges. They want to know about God. They want to know about Jesus. They want to know about God's word. So prime place.
Yeah.
I think also it's an easy on-ramp, right?
What do you mean?
Like, so you don't have to have technical knowledge. You don't have to work behind the scenes a soundboard or a camera like in a worship service. You don't have to know how to play the saxophone, but you can help in the nursery, pray for and change diapers, or you don't even have to have a bunch of teaching skills, right? Because either you're provided curriculum or you're sitting around a small group table with second
just by
graders.
being an adult, it's amazing.
So, and then maybe the last thing I'm going to say, because I have so much I want to say about this, is what you alluded to, Dave, because now that we're parents, which is awesome, man, when I'm going into the nursery to pick up my daughter, those folks in there have both served my daughter and those little ones really well, but guess who they also served? Me and my wife.
Yeah, 100%.
And we're building relationships with them. And so when you serve in children's, you actually begin to know the families of the church, and you get to know kind of almost the whole church or close to it a lot of times because you're serving these kids. It's not just kids you're building relationships with.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because one of the nursery care workers is a person my wife now talks to basically the most at church.
Yep.
And he was like giving us tons of encouragement as we potentially pursue adoption and foster care. And it's like, oh, Allie, last Sunday hung out there for probably about 35 minutes. And it's like, there's so much love. You took care of our child. Like, potentially the little human creature that we love more than anything in this world.
That's right.
And that does bond you. I would add too, especially if we're talking about like making friends, some of the other activities, maybe even that are seasonal, like if you love kids, get involved in a vacation Bible school or an Awanas or any type programming like that. It's usually short in season, only a couple weeks, but can have a massive impact. And so many of even my friends got saved through that and had a mentorship role with somebody who led them to the Lord through a program like that. I know you ran Awanas for years at your church. If you like, which I don't know what kind of person this would make you because I'm not this person, but if you like teenagers, get involved with the youth group.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's a
awesome.
gigantic need there. Teenagers can be challenging, super challenging.
And really formative. It's really cool.
And that's where oftentimes they're being formed, they're changing really quickly and they're asking questions and they need people to just show up, be consistent, be dependable, be mentors. Heck, even if you like sports, there's undoubtedly church activities and sports ball programs and things you can get involved with, whether it's adult leagues. I play slow pitch men's league softball every summer. Woot woot B League, here we go. Just smacking dingers. But ironically, it's the softball guys that have actually become my closest community at church. So when I show up, there's guys there who are literally elders in the church, 15 years ahead of me in life. Those 5 years younger than me just getting out of college, and it's just special. And that community is catalyzed because of sports ball.
Well, and I think as a segue, like that's both an opportunity where I think at some churches are like, hey, we have a program where we do sports stuff. Other churches like, we don't have a program for that, but hey, there's these guys or these gals that do this thing that you find out about, right? What a great example. I might say that there's a number of what you might call affinity groups at a lot of churches, which just means you're in a certain season or you have a certain need, and this is like a spot that you should totally step into. So for people who are struggling with something, maybe it's like addiction stuff, alcohol stuff, like there's plenty of churches that have a group like, please, if that's like what's going on in your heart and life, do it. Step into that group. Or financial classes. I love the classes at our church that talk about stewardship and finance. It's been a huge help to me. Or groups for single parents or divorced folks or widowed folks, right? Or young adults,
Yeah.
right?
What if you're not married?
Yeah. What if you're not married? I'm single or I'm a young adult. Huge opportunity. But let me say, don't let you only saying, where's my group of my stripe of people prevent you from plugging into a church.
Amen.
Most churches are probably really healthy that don't have a million affinity groups, right? Okay, Asian single dads between the ages of 40 and 45, go over here to this group. Well, oftentimes that's like we need to have a healthy view of the diversity of God's people and step in wherever God calls us to, although sometimes affinity groups are helpful too.
Thank you. That's really a great overview. We do come to that part of the podcast where I need to ask, so what? What have we learned about creating friendships in church?
I think it's simple. I think be intentional, show up, be part of the body that you're in. That means encouraging each other, praying for each other, lifting each other up, bearing each other's burdens, walking through life with each other, show hospitality, be generous, put others' interests ahead of your own, and simply put, live the kind of faith reflective of what will build and grow the local church that Christ's legacy left behind and that we're called to. And that so oftentimes is so rewarding to your own spiritual life. But that's our call.
Wonderful. Well, Bob, why don't you take us home with our call to action? What is your next step?
Yeah, what's your next step? Reach out. So this week, figure out a way to reach out to somebody else in the life of your church that you can either begin a potential friendship with or take that one more step forward, right? What's your little next step in the relationship with this person? So that could be a text message where you send to a guy who's kind of a buddy or a gal who's kind of a friend. Or that could be inviting someone to go to something. Hey, you see him at Sunday a bunch. Hey, let's go grab coffee. Let's do an early morning breakfast before we head to work. Maybe this is a new person that you've never met at church, right? Like Dave was talking about. You reach out to them. Maybe it's someone you've known a little bit, but you want to do the next step. Maybe it's someone who's older than you in age. Go for it. All we're saying is this week, reach out and then jump on our socials and tell us what you did. We would love to get some great ideas of how you're making friends in your church.
Yeah. Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Dave. And thank you for joining us for this episode of the Binmin podcast. We know that the Christian life can be hard to figure out, but we also believe that everyone should know their next step for making their spiritual life more important to them. Binmin is a resource ministry dedicated to helping you discover that next step.
Yeah, so thank you for tuning into this episode, whether it was on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe, follow us on social medias, and give us feedback about what you thought of this episode. And make sure to go to binmin.org because that's where you'll see the show notes for this episode. You'll see other episodes, you'll see blogs, and a host of resources that'll hopefully allow you to get to that next step that you're pursuing here in your spiritual life. Thankful for your time spent here. Look forward to next time. God bless.